Hello and very hello and really great to be with you guys tonight. Thank you so much for joining this kind of mini launch, mini celebration, mini gathering of the authors and obviously supporters of Being Fine. We really are global tonight. I'm really grateful. We've got Teresa coming in from Australia. We've got Yunan coming from Nigeria, obviously myself, and I know Mike, Michael, Maria, Asma, and I believe Khalid and Asif too in the UK. So and so really great to do this and actually have this conversation tonight. The second edition of the Being Fine book has been launched, and thank you for watching this wherever you're watching this from. If you haven't bought the book already, please do. It's up on Kapil's shelf. I'm waiting for my new editions to come through. I've sold out of all my old editions, so I'm really excited to receive the new editions coming through. And we have one of our 3 new authors who are who joined the Being Fine message. Those that are authors in Being Fine, can you give us a wave, please? There we go. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. I will get you guys to introduce yourself in a minute because, and I'd like you just to answer 2 questions if you can. Asif, Khalid, Teresa, Asma, Yunan, please drop your information, your details into the chat. Say hi, who you are, where you're from. If you've bought the book, bought or read the book yet. And we'd love to hear more from you. That would be great. And thank you again for joining us. So I'm Jo Baldwin. I'm the editor and publisher of Being Fine. Yunan is part of my publishing team. So if anyone needs any books done, Yunan is your man. He's just amazing, incredibly patient and very speedy. So this book was published initially 18 months or so ago, and the message is very much about this other F word and about the hiding behind the word fine that people do. Kapil starts the book very powerfully with his message about his work with men and how the word fine was used as a mask. And funnily enough, throughout many of the chapters, the word mask is used a lot, a pretense. And that is a reference point, I feel, for this message, that we can hide behind words. And interestingly, Prince Harry has been on the Late Show very recently using that very phrase and actually fully admitting, stating that he used to say, "I'm fine," to anyone asking him when he knew he was struggling, because they wouldn't ask him any other questions afterwards. It was the absolute guarantee that you can just say those words and people go, oh, okay, I will just back off and leave you alone then. And this was a word that really came through very powerfully. Mike, to Kapil, Maria, and all the other authors in the first edition. It felt like the book was missing a little bit more texture, and I'm really thrilled and grateful to have Michael Ogle-Rush join us in the second edition. Also Perry Power, and also we have now Robert Gore. Robert Gore is actually in Hawaii, and his message is one I feel many men will relate to. It wasn't until he was around 70 that he really feels that he had his first cry. He went on a retreat, and he was so unwell internally. He was a GP, he was a doctor, he did incredible medical profession, and he never really looked after himself, and he ignored his own feelings. And it was only until he went on to this retreat and he was given this permission to really cry and let his emotions come through, and as well as obviously unveiling the truth of what was behind all those tears. Perry Power has a very powerful, incredible message about how he was suffered abuse, physical, sexual abuse from his grandfather. Incredibly tragic story, but his powerful chapter and his own book is titled Breaking the Silence, because it is so important to break the silence with abuse. I'm really thrilled to have Asma Begum here, who I'm founder of the charity Soul Sisters, and she's the founder of the charity. I'm the patron of the charity Soul Sisters. We have some soul brothers here as well. And this very much part of the charity's message is to break the silence, is to know that it's wrong, know that something's wrong, and break your silence and share. So it all very aligned and very powerful. And finally, Michael. Michael's chapter is very much something I feel a lot of people relate to. And I'm going to leave it there because Michael's here and grateful that he can make it. And I'll come back to you next, Kapil, after. I'd love to hear from the authors. Really briefly, if you could just share who you are and where you're at. Always nice to hear where you're at. And also why you wrote for this book, and your key offering. But that would be great. Michael, let's start with you because you're our newest author, and then we'll come to the others in turn. So, and if anyone's got any questions, please put them on the screen, put them in the chat, and we will ask. And obviously, reach out to any of the authors separately. Authors, if you could all put your details in as well, please, in case anyone listens or hears anything and they want to reach out to you directly. Okay, Michael. So, welcome. What are you up to? You know, it's lovely to have you here, and why be part of being fine?
I actually recall having a talk with you about kind of being fine, and just mentioned I have a story, and I briefly kind of shared it with you, and in that conversation I had the kind of realization that actually it was poignant. And ever since graduating sort of 3 years ago, I had experienced quite profound and kind of deep grief, and proverbially being kind of at university nearly killed me. So I've been in a period of recovery, and the opportunity to write my chapter was inherently cathartic. It was beautifully kind of therapeutic, and to put kind of words to paper really greatly kind of assisted, and I am a strong advocator or a strong advocate of being able to open up, to be vulnerable, and to be able to kind of speak up when it's required, because I struggled to speak up. I struggled to be seen, to be visible. And my chapter is around being kind of asked at school, are you gay? And kind of in that moment, I had this sort of shudder, and I said no. And whether I even required to kind of answer them in that moment. But equally, kind of the courage to even kind of stand there and even be truthful with myself did start a very long journey, really, of then returning to myself. So the unofficial title chapter was Denial, Repression, Depression to Acceptance, Liberation, and Well-being. And I'm not gay when I am. I'm fine when I'm not fine. And it's actually incredible to have written the chapter and to be here with you all.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate you coming tonight, and obviously appreciate you sharing your message in the book, because I'm sure there are so many people that will relate. And I don't know about anyone else here, but I can certainly think of someone who didn't share that they were gay until they were so much later on in life. And it's yeah, is there anything, anyone watching this, Michael, you obviously would recommend buying the book, but is there anything, since like you say, cathartic to write your story, and I think most authors I've worked with, they all say the same, and I definitely find the same, but what would you offer to anyone right now who is in that space? And actually, this obviously doesn't just apply to being gay, it applies hugely to being denial, which is what Maria's chapter is referencing as well. What would you like to offer anyone who's listening, watching?
It's being in the space to acknowledge.
I think
Sorry, Michael.
Okay. To acknowledge personal truth. And it is not an easy process. But it begins with yourself. It begins with that ability to kind of acknowledge personal truth, because I've personally experienced what denial and repression, and actually just how devastating kind of that is. So yes, essentially being kind of truthful with yourself.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for sharing. I will come back to you in a bit. I'd love to come to Kapil now, because I know Kapil can't stay too long. So before he scoots off, and obviously Maria, I'd love to come back to you, because I think your message, like I say, is really super aligned with Michael's. Kapil, what would you like to offer? If you could just give a quick which is just an overview of your chapter, and anything you'd like to add, obviously, because we've had many chats online, and there's lots of videos on YouTube of me speaking to all the authors individually. But is there anything you'd like to add in the journey since you wrote the book? You've done a TED Talk, well, you've done more than one TED Talk now, and you're in coaching, you coach men. Anything else you'd like to offer to this message?
Yeah, thanks, Jo, and thank you, Michael, for that. Great to have you as part of the book, and great to see Mike, Maria. Great to see you guys again, and everyone. What would I like to add? I think it surprises me every time. I work with men quite a lot in my transformational life coaching process, and I meet a lot of men who have been on the path of success, achievement, wanting status, wanting money, wanting material gains, and spending their entire life building something, ticking all the boxes like I did for a long time, and hoping that once they get there, once they have achieved all of those things, once they've got the relationship, once they've got the money and the job and status and everything, that they will be happy. What I found, and what I find with most people, is not only that we are not happy, fulfilled, joyful, but in the process we actually lose ourselves, and we learn this amazing word, fine, which it's so funny that we talk about fine, and I think earlier this morning someone was texting me and they said fine, and for me fine is now permanently an abbreviation for frustrated, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. So I don't say, I think I still sometimes slip it out, but usually I don't. Anyone who's saying fine, that's how I hear, and I usually don't say fine. However, I see this as a pandemic. I think so I'm doing a lot of work around the rational and the non-rational at the moment, and I think we live in a culture that prioritizes and puts the rational on a pedestal, and anything non-rational, which is our feelings, our emotions, being uncertain, out of control, is seen as less than, is seen as not necessary, second grade citizen. And I find that a lot of us are disconnected from that part of ourselves. And for me, that was one of the big things over the last 10 years, the work that I've done. Really, if I'm to summarize it, it's actually connecting to the non-rational and removing all the fear, the shame, and everything else that comes from living in the non-rational. So I recently changed my Instagram profile, and I put this thing, I'm a practicing non-rational.
I like it.
That's how I want my life to be, because I think that is where life is. And especially for men, I think we get so and I'm talking generalization here, because I think it's a masculine conditioning, which men and women have too, but mostly men. Like we get these messages around what does it mean to be a man, and those messages mostly should really be ignored. And I think so. Yeah, that's my work, and that's really what I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of nods. I think that's really relatable, that this conditioning to just switch everything off. That's not what we do, and the repercussions of that are, like you say, it's almost like it's not human to be human. And that's, we're just not being real to ourselves. Yeah, and I think it's really succinct part of your message, Kapil. And if anyone would like to watch Kapil's TED Talks, we've got actually 3 TED talkers now in the book, along with Simon, and also, sorry, not Simon, Perry, and the other one, who's it? John Allison.
John, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you for joining us.
I will be leaving shortly, but it was great to
Sure.
see you guys. I'm gonna just leave in a bit.
Yeah, great to have you. If anyone's
great to
wants
see
catch up
everyone.
with Kapil, if you put your details in, Kapil, for anyone to
I'll
reach
put it in
out
the
to
chat.
you, that would be amazing in the chat, and then people can get hold of you. Thank you.
Will do.
Definitely feels to come on to Maria, because I know I've spoken to Maria very recently about the work that she's doing, and it really is, you know, on that topic, you know, very, very clearly. I'll let Maria share more. Maria, very, very warm welcome. Lovely to have you. I know you're just down the road, but we could have been on the sofa together again.
Hi
great,
everyone,
great
good
to
to
see
see you, and well done for the new edition, especially Michael, well done. I read all the new chapters, and I think it's a real evolution of what you started with us, so I thought that was awesome. And I've just moved on actually myself, so I collaborated in the first book, and I offered my own personal journey from the darkness and those dark places into what I understand to be a journey, like a magical adventure into the light of what I really am, and the light that I think everybody really is. And it's like, have you ever read The Wind in the Willows, anyone? Or do you
I don't think I've ever read it. I've watched it, but not read it.
Oh, I really, really recommend to read the book, because so when they go into the forest, and it's the winter in the woods, it's actually all about the dark night of the soul. It's really, really clever.
Wow.
The author, it's amazing. And then all the little animals have got to survive, and there's loads of danger, and they're really scared. But it's the perfect metaphor for that. And so most of my life I did that whole go into the darkness and look through and find all the bits of light. And now what I do really differently and much more joyously is actually just go straight to my genius instead. And I have actually learned, since I last did this 2 years ago, that there's actually, and this would have shocked me to hear this, like, from myself 2 years ago. There's just no need to go into my darkness. It's because I didn't put it there. I didn't create that. Not guilty. It was just my family conditioning, societal conditioning, my gender conditioning. None of that I created myself. So I literally got myself off the hook, and just thought, why don't I focus on creating who I really am? And it's been so much fun, because that's what they talk about, the flow state. And to cheat the ego into, I'm about to die, so whoa, I'm gonna be. So this real power comes through, you know. But you don't. I suggest you don't need to put yourself in those freakily dangerous situations to actually connect with that. It's actually really easily accessible through various different forms. So I've just put my link on there. It's something that I'm crazy passionate about facilitating, because it's the genius in you, the artist, the soul, the one that knows, the one that's always known, the one that, like, remember when you were a little child and you just used to look up to the sky or look at the rain falling down on the window, and you just had it was just that sense of being at one with everything. That's always available, and it's my total pleasure and joy to remind whoever, you know, this is who I think you really are, and it's really fun and enjoyable. So thank you. That's where I'm at, and thank you so much.
Oh, amazing! Really great to have you, and what a difference, you know, that you've had. In just incredible to see and experience that journey. I love that. You know, we are creative beings, aren't we? And again, it's very in line with what Kapil was saying. We've forgotten forgotten that part of ourselves, just on these treadmills of living a certain way. And yeah, and so I think Michael and I had a conversation a while ago about joy and how much joy do we really experience in life. And and I said, I don't think I really have, actually, not proper joy, not unbridled joy. And it's, I think that's, I'm definitely not alone. Definitely not alone. Yeah, really great. Oh, thank you, Maria. Maria's put her details in. I just saw those come up. We'll try and have a conversation. I will keep an eye on the time for people, but we'll try and have more of a conversation in a minute. If anyone's got any questions for any of the authors, or any points they'd like to raise, please just put them in the chat, especially if you're really prompted by what you're hearing tonight. And finally, let's come on to Mike. And Mike has a beautifully contrasting stories for all of you tonight. And Mike's story is incredibly powerful. It really touched me of an aspect of life for men that isn't considered, isn't really spoken about. Mike, just if you please give us an overview of your chapter, and also what's happened to you since you were in the first book.
Hi, yes, I'm Mike. Good evening. So I live in North Devon. I left the big city. I left London about 14 months ago. And this year will be my 60th year on the planet. How's about that? The big 60.
Wow.
I know I don't look a day over 25, do I? No.
I was just about to say that.
But yeah, so my chapter is entitled His Menopause, which I'll come back to, but I just wanted to identify hugely with what Kapil just talked about there, because I consider that I've lived a fairly conventional life as a man in our age. You're born in the 60s. I was a child in the 70s, really a young adult in the early 80s. And I was conditioned in a way to, get the job, get married, have a family, and really progress through the career ladder, if you will, as much as I possibly could. And therein would lie, as Kapil said, all the happiness, all the gold, all the wonderfulness. And it was like a yellow brick road that you're put on as a child, and you keep going. And men are very good at, I think, being self-reliant and keeping going. And we're very good at hiding our feelings and what troubles us. And so we use the fine word when people ask us, even though we're not fine. And like Kapil was saying, and like we're all saying, I use that word a lot. But suddenly all the pillars that I'd built for my life, fell away. The biggest was the big D, was divorce. That was about 13 years ago, actually. And the main reason was that my wife at the time, my first wife, was struggling very severely with menopause. And so there are two aspects to my story. One is I felt I was on a mission because I didn't know what that was. I didn't understand it. And I had to inform myself. I had to read a lot of books, and came to realize that the transition that our female partners go through is very substantive. It's completely earth-shattering in many cases, and sadly, can lead to the breakup of relationships and what have you. Certainly change relationships at a very fundamental level in ways that you never expect, you never thought would happen. And so it's, in some senses, my story is very normal, but I came to realize that, listen, this happens to absolutely every one of us, and nobody's talking about it. We are now a lot more, women are talking about it a lot more, but men aren't, because it's too sensitive. It's a subject we're not supposed to talk about. And indeed, my father, who's still alive, he's 85, I've actually tried to speak to him about it, believe it or not. and he completely clammed up, you know, and said, oh, you know, what are you doing, kind of thing, you know. So there's a generational aspect to this too, and there's a generational aspect to accepting as men that there is strength in our vulnerability. And so, you know, I went through challenges with my career, with my marriage. I lost my marriage and everything like that, became a single parent, a single working father. Now, you don't hear about them very much, do you? So that's something else that I was wanting to light a torch on, another dimension to it. But no, I eventually sat in front of my GP, actually, because I had nobody else to talk to at the time, and admitted at the time that I wasn't fine. In fact, that I was struggling very severely with not sleeping, with severe anxiety, etc., etc., etc. And because all the pillars of my life had fallen away, and that affected me deeply, because I wasn't prepared to admit that actually, traumatic as it was okay. You know, it really was okay, and that you know, from ground level, from ground zero, you can build again, so to speak, but build in a different way. So there are lots of aspects, I think, to what happened at the time and why I contributed to the book, because it's something I'm still thinking about, and I still think there's not enough spoken about how vulnerable we are as men at the transition in life that we all have to go through, if that makes sense. So hopefully I wasn't rambling too much, Jo.
No, not at all. No, I really appreciate your sharing, Mike, and you know, like you say, it is aligned with what Kapil was saying, that conditioning and almost like I've heard this myself, is that it's just women things, things, and how kind of not to judge, but how ignorant, but not, you know, through conditioning that is. It's to just say, well, whatever women are going through, we'll leave them to it. And in that itself is saying, actually, let's have this big gap between who we really are as humans and what we're experiencing as physical beings. Let's pretend it's not happening. And also relationship wise, you're just saying, well, actually, I'm not going to be part of my wife's challenges in that way. You know, it's really, I don't think your dad would be alone. I think there would be a lot of people that would relate to hearing that kind of response. It's like, oh no, don't want to go there. In the book I've just published before this, second edition, Women Leading in Our New World, which Asma is in too, there's a whole section about menopause and how difficult it is, shared by a very powerful story written by Adele Martin. And she is absolutely championing, she's going to number 10 Downing Street, and championing much more awareness around menopause for women and men. So it's you know, it really does need to be spoken about. But thank you, Mike. That's amazing. I really appreciate you sharing. And if does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask the authors while we're here, it'd be great to have while we've got Maria and Michael and Mike and me. Teresa, I know, was an author from Silver Linings and from Women Leading. So lovely to have you here. But if anyone's got any questions, just put your hand up, and I'd love to come to you and see if you've got. We can just create a bit of a discussion. What I'd like to offer whilst people are thinking of that is it's thanks to Fat Boy Slim. That's a bit of a strange statement, but I live in Hove, Brighton, and I was going to the cafe during sort of a very cold time, going to the cafe, and Fat Boy Slim decided to work at the cafe that he partly owns, and he made a really clear comment. He'd been reading the book, and he said it was very good, Jo, very good, but you need more diversity. But it is such a huge huge topic. You know, it touches everyone, and I really think that it's actually very hard. But I think in this, now that we've created this, I don't need to do a third edition. But personally, I felt like we needed more texture, and I'm grateful for you, Michael, for coming in. I'm grateful for Robert, who couldn't make tonight, unfortunately, sharing what it's like to go through your whole life not speaking about how you feel, your emotions, and what you've been troubled with, but care so much about everyone else. I know Teresa works in well-being and does lots of therapy and healing work, and that is such a core element, which is really aligned with what you're saying, Mike. That you go through your life, it's about the yellow brick road. Keep going, keep going. I'd love to ask Michael and actually any of the other authors, have you had any sort of powerful responses from your chapters? Have any of you had any people say, oh my God, I was shocked, or really personally they've been very touched? I mean, obviously the reviews on Amazon speak volumes. Half are from women. So this book has really supported men as women as much as women. Women have been given an insight into men that they never had before. In fact, one woman did share that if she'd got the book when she was married, it might have saved her marriage. But have any of you had any strong sort of kind of reactions, or friends that have made any comments about your words? Michael, you.
I did at one point, sitting in a coffee shop with a friend, essentially kind of read it out loud, and the friend in question was very kind of moved by the words. I've had not a lot of experience of getting people's kind of feedback in that respect. However, I've talked to a few friends regarding it, and just I don't really have kind of words as much as just tremendous, I suppose it's tremendous kind of support, but also actually holding space. And I do recall a friend who was kind of enjoying kind of being here, but unable to, said it's such an important subject.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Really is, and I'm actually mindful of Asif and Khalid being here, because being from Soul Brothers, you know, Mike talked about his the menopause experiencing for men. Obviously, there's a lot of men that experience abuse and domestic violence, and you know, it must be phenomenally hard as a man to come forward and say, actually, you know, would either of you like to participate in that? Because I think it's really relevant to the whole message of the book. Have you used this, if you were personally, or have heard the word fine? Do you have anything you'd like to add on that? Let's see, for Khalid.
Yeah, actually, you know, I'll say to all the authors, it's well done. You've done such amazing work there, because to come out and to share your experience, you know, in your life and everything, it's amazing, you know. And with Michael, I think I can share that with him, with being born in the 60s and raised up in the 80s, 90s, you know. And also, I didn't know that menopause is in men as well, you know. But you learn something new, you know. And as for the domestic side of things, you know, I think it's quite similar to what individually each male go through. They actually feel they tend to hide things, you know, they tend to keep things in themselves, you know, and as Michael said that, I've got the first name now, who say that men do tend to hide things, keep things in themselves, and they're very hard to come out and to share. And it kind of, it all goes hand in hand with what all these authors are going through, and with the domestic side of things. It's quite similar, very much alike, you know. And it's all about individual person and their experience, you know, and same with the men who go through domestic violence in their marriages, you know, and it does happen to men who go through a lot of these, but keep silent, keep them in themselves.
Yeah.
And it's good to have a book like this to sort of get them to open up, who can read these kind of books and sort of they feel that they can share, you know, their sort of experience in life.
Oh, thank you, Khalid. That's really, yeah, it's great. And I think what you're kind of you're emphasizing is that ability to be vulnerable, and that ability to say, actually, I will admit what's wrong. I will come forward and admit to myself, as Michael said.
And the same with the, I've got the first gentleman, the first author. What's his name? The first author.
Kapil?
Sorry?
Kapil?
No, the other show. Well, he was saying that how he came out and he sort of in denial and everything. And I think sometimes in marriages you're in denial that your marriage is going to work or not going to work. And you tend to have that experience, you know, of coming to terms that sometimes it's working or it's not working, or is it due to issues and problems, you know, in the marriage. But it's amazing. It's nice to hear the story from each individual about their life, you know. It's nice for them to share.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Lee. That's really really helpful. I'd love to.
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, because I just came on a bit later. What was the name of the book?
It's called Being Fine, the Other F Word. Perhaps Michael could drop the link in. I
would definitely buy the book and have a read.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd love you to read and review it and share with anyone. It's on Amazon.
And you know what, I say well done to the authors here who actually come out and to actually share that, because sometimes reaches out other people who are in similar situation or circumstances.
Absolutely. Yeah, your line's not very good, Khalid, but thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Asif, is there something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, my circumstances, it's quite interesting being fine, because I mean, I was in an abusive marriage, you know, and it was almost like being fine. I was playing a double role, you know, at home with my abusive partner, you know, vulnerable, you know, but to the outside world, whether I was going to work, you know, whether it was my friends or my family, who, you know, everything was fine, you know, but part of it was me giving that impression, you know, that, you know what, I can't talk to anyone, don't worry, everything will resolve itself. And you know what, she'll realize he isn't a bad guy, he's actually a decent, nice guy, and you know what I'm doing is wrong, you know. Keep making, you know, what's the word, excuses, you know, like she's had a bad childhood or she's been let down by so many people. But I think the point I'm trying to make here is my own experience was I wasn't fine when I was at home, but I was fine it was almost like a double role, Jo. It's, you know, I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, like there's
Yeah.
two sides of you. You've got there's two people within the one person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was away, that person was fine. Yeah, but it was like you're reeled back in again, and yeah, and it was just a vicious cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, and what obviously you have now spoken up, you know, and I would really appreciate you sharing that. What has enabled you to be that honest with yourself, Asif?
I think I think for me, there's a couple of things. I mean, it was only last week I had a meeting with the chief inspector, and one thing I did say to him, some of the things that I've suffered, I've sort of said I can't tell my family, you know, because you know I just don't want to. I don't want to confide in my friends, my people that I'm close with, you know, and I do really appreciate a forum like Soul Brothers and Soul Sisters, you know, but there's not enough out there, Jo, you know, for people like me, and there's a lot, you know, there literally is a lot of people that are suffering in silence. And one thing I said to the policeman is, I said, if you look at me, beard, big guy, shaved head, you will have 40 new recruits in the police force tomorrow. I would love to go up in front of them, you know, because these guys, you know, are going to be young, you know, men and women. But the reality is, we still in today's society judge a book by its cover, you know, and the reality is, look, my name's Asif, you know, and for 10 years I've suffered 10 years. But you know, one thing I'm going to say is I put a LinkedIn article on the other day, and I don't normally post, right? And on there, I was trying to break barriers and stereotypes. My daughter, she's 6 years old, and I only know one hairstyle, you know, a ponytail. And I used to dread it in the morning, thinking, what can I do? So I actually booked myself a lesson with the hairdresser, and I posted that, you know, where now I know 3. And I think the point I'm trying to make is one thing I have learned is, you know what? At the end of the day, no one knows everything. You know what? I didn't know what a hair clip was. I didn't even know what a detangler brush was. What I'm trying to say is for me, the most important thing, I'm a children. You know, that's what's given me the motivation to speak on. And you know, and there's a couple of other things, but I know what I've been through, and I know there's limited resources out there, and even if it means one person, it can make a difference to one person, like the way asthma has made a difference in my life.
Yeah.
Then I think that's a job well done, because it is a very lonely and dark place. It you know, very lonely and dark, you know, where realistically, and I love to say it, but you just find it difficult to confide, you know. It's one of them, but sometimes I do feel like what is it, you know, one of them Tommy Two Heads from Batman, you know, where you've got flip a coin. Yeah, sometimes I feel really sad. Sometimes, you know, it's not like I can switch off like a light bulb, you know, but that's my story. But one thing I'm going to say is more forums like this. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, everyone's got something, you know what they're sharing. And you know what, you're right. You know, sometimes we say fine because it's the normal thing to say. But you know what's normal? Who defines normal?
Exactly.
You know? Yeah. Anyway, I'll shut up now because I think
No, honestly, thank you so much. It's been really beautiful, you sharing your story, and I'm I say that on behalf of everyone. Just really appreciate you being really honest and opening up. And I think that's again, as part of it, it's actually the people that on paper you think you could turn to and share and talk about are the very last people that are the people that you end up sharing with, because
absolutely
there will be that judgment, or there may be that judgment, and that's a big risk. And but it's fantastic that you're taking it to the courts, and you're following that criminal line. You know, it's really, really brave of you.
I mean, the other thing as well is, Joe, the other thing is I've got 4 sisters. They're all older than me. And one thing I don't want to share is, because I know it's quite upsetting.
Mm.
And the last thing I want to do is, you know, on the back of my mind is upset my sisters or upset my friends. Because otherwise then all you do is then you get into this spiral of, you know, I can't believe this. I wish I was there for you, you know, because I'd feel exactly the same if that happened to my sister.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes, you know what, and that's why I do think, you know, sometimes whether it's a stranger or someone from a forum like this, you know, because you can empathize a lot better, you know, and I think, you know, because I'm not after sympathy, you know, far from it. Yeah, I need someone that can understand, not yeah. So, but yeah, so.
Yeah, no, you're raising such great points, Ceci, because you know that empathy is really powerful, and sort of another reason I love Soul Sisters, that we've all experienced it, so that empathy is there, and it's different, and actually you can't expect people to know what it feels like. You can't, and that is you know, that's a given really. But I think you know, it's great what you've done, and it's great you're speaking up and pursuing it. So well done. Really appreciate you being here and sharing. I just saw some before we as we're about to sort of wrap up soon. Would anyone else like to add anything before? Oh, thank you. Maria's sharing some videos. That's brilliant. Is there anyone? I know Yunan, as you were doing all the work for this book to get it online and everything, you were quite, you know, really blown away by the words. You don't feel you need to, but if you could just put a comment about what you felt, or if you'd like to come on screen and share what you felt about the book and what it meant to you, it would be great. And obviously, if you don't want to, don't worry. But it is the kind of book that has really such broadly touched so many people. And as I said earlier, half the reviews on Amazon are from women. The book was really created for men, really, to support men and encourage them to not use this word. And interestingly, I was on BBC Radio London yesterday, and talking to Eddie Nestor about various things. And I was on at 12:10, and at 11:15 he was speaking to a caller, and all she kept saying was, my dad kept saying, I'm fine. So they're talking about dementia all week on Radio London. Very, very powerful series. And how this specific segment was about, well, this woman was saying that, you know, her dad kept saying, I'm fine, I'm okay, I don't need to see the doctor. So and I personally, with my own dad, he told me he was fine just before he left the house, before he flew back to Gambia. He'd come home from my grand's funeral, and I never saw him again. But he had some heart problems. He had a little bit of heartburn, but it was worse than that. And but so when it comes to medical problems, it's a really common word used by men, is in my experience. And I worked with many police officers who said, I'm fine, I don't need to see the doctor, when they're suffering from very physical conditions. Policing is a very stressful job. There are lots of jobs that's stressful, and men definitely have historically used this word. Oh, thank you for sharing, Yoon. And I'm just going to share your words as you've kindly offered them. That you've been struggling with some issues yourself. Didn't know if it's okay to share with anyone. I held it all to myself. But while I was editing and formatting this book, I read some lines, and that made me pick interest. I started reading all the chapters afterwards. And I must say my mind has been broadened on the best way. I understand that it's okay to speak up. Oh my God, I'm just really touched by you sharing this, Yunan. I feel better. I want to appreciate you all. Well, that is such a gift for you to share that, to be so honest with your own experience with editing this book. I'm being quite emotional reading this, but I'm really glad. I'm really glad and grateful to all the authors and for this experience for you to realize, yes, it is okay to feel these different ways and to share and to be honest with how we feel. That's amazing. How does that make you feel, Mike? You know, knowing that this, the power of your words and all the other authors is still having such an impact. It's fantastic.
It's wonderful to hear. Thank you. And again, I appreciate that sharing. I know this is the second edition, Jo, but I really do feel you're just getting going with it. You know, there could be a third and fourth and fifth, because there's lots of other stories and contributors could come forward, I think, and it's allowing these conversations to happen that helps everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there are definite common themes for sure, but still there's such power in these individual stories. And you know, Michael, I'm sure your words will stretch far and wide with people that have faced incredible difficulties with being honest with you know, being gay, or you know, I'm speaking to someone who's just had had an operation. You know, there's so many different aspects where we're hiding and not being true with ourselves. So yeah, no, perhaps, Mike, we'll see. We'll see. It's always the cliche, isn't it? You say, I'm not going to do any more on this, and then before you know it, the universe has other plans. And yeah, I take it's very joyful. It's very joyful creating these messages. And oh, thank you for sharing, Asma. I'm going to, as you kindly put your words on, just going to read those out to anyone listening. So my dad's migrated from Bangladesh in the 70s. He always says, I'm fine, even though now he's a heart patient and recently been told his eyes are weak, but he says, I'm fine. He's been brought up to not share his feelings. So yeah, and I teach my son to talk about his feelings. Well, that is, for me, that is where I see the absolute light of the tunnel, that you are changing, that you're breaking that cycle, Asma, and you're encouraging your son. And you know, I know there's Mark Picture, it shares his chapter in the story, his story as a chapter, sorry, that his son used this word, I'm fine. So the changes that are made, very sadly, but we can make changes in the way we speak to boys, speak to men. Oh, sorry, did you hear that? This is a very loud car, motorbike. So that is key, isn't it, to changing it, so that people like, you know, anyone coming from anywhere, that we can change this really continual, perpetual cycle of not speaking up. So important that we share with how we feel. Oh, well, thank you so much, everyone. It's been an absolute joy. Michael, great to have you here as one of the other authors. Thank you. Asma's really enjoyed hearing from you. That's fantastic. I will have another one, because Mike, Perry's words and also Robert's words in the new edition are incredibly powerful. So I will have another call organised maybe in a couple of weeks' time. And you'll all be very, very welcome. We'll keep you posted. So just if everyone come onto the, unmute yourselves and just say thank you, goodbye, and just to round off with just a verbal collective message from around the world to say goodbye. It'd be amazing. And let's not use this other F word. Do not use this other F word.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What's your contribution?
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.